right, welcome back to this channel. And our topic for today is about the purchasing business process, which is a part of the accounting information systems subject. And so we will just create um, a mini application with the Postgres backend, and all the other issues will be discussed in the next video. So stay tuned. And don't forget to subscribe. Okay, so the big question now is, what is the difference between just a trivia question just before we proceed, so we will understand. Data analytics have their own thing about designing databases, data lakes, transformation. But the main difference is just simple. The accounting database has already been made prior to operations, and there might be changes, but it's not something that you can tinker with it, right? It's very strict. The rules are very strict. Whereas data analytics, there's you know, it's like data analysts, data scientists. They're like have tools, and they would we would they can query all the data because it's post operations, right? So they can do anything with it. But unlike in the accounting department, you cannot change, you cannot play with the data unless it's just for analysis, right? So let's set the trivia aside and let's proceed. And we just look at this diagram. This is the diagram of purchasing, I'm sorry, a purchasing business process. Okay, so there's a suppliers, products, categories, and if you notice, there is no accounting yet. Actually, I used Chat GPT to generate this. So, but there's no accounting here. So let's proceed. So, just to explain, so what we saw earlier about the ER diagram is just from here, purchasing, receiving, and the warehouse, right? So, of course, when the database design was made, suppliers table, of course, was anticipated. So, and then we have, of course, the products control. They're more like the lookup, which we shall see later. And then here's the accounting part, which is we did not see, right? Oh, so okay, so let's proceed. So so just to compare, so if you can see, these are, like I said, these are control tables or lookup tables, and then we have the transaction tables. I think both of these, we can consider this as transaction tables, and so that's only here, right? So we did not see this one. We do not see rather this one. So we need to add something and then generate the balances later. Okay, so let's proceed. You can see we will add a table in the chart of accounts. This is for purposes of generating the financial statements and account balances. Okay, balances, and then of course we add the accounts payable table because in order to complete the journal entry. So the journal entry is actually quite simple. We have inventory, we buy inventory or goods, and then we credit AP. Both increase, right? Our liabilities increase and our inventory increases rather. So um, the updated um, APV table, we add a purchase detail ID. So what will happen here in order to generate the amount is to make joins. which we will demonstrate later, joins. So we will use this purchase detail ID to get to this amount, right? And this purchase order ID is we will make the joins so to get this amount eventually. Okay, so we will create the CTE and the temporal. Actually, I'm sorry. There are like three ways to do this, but for purposes of this tutorial, we will use the CTE. Okay. So we will create these tables: accounts payable, chart of accounts, table products, purchase orders, table purchases, and table suppliers. We already explained this uh, a little earlier. Suppliers and the products are the lookup tables, and the rest. I mean, the purchase orders and the purchases you could consider this as transaction tables, and the accounts payable and the chart of accounts for purposes of our accounting. All right. So these are the syntax. The creates statement, the select statement, the insert values in the examples below, right? And we have the common table expressions. This is how we will create the SQL, and we will use Postgres database. Okay. All right. It's the Postgres database part here. So we will create a database. So our ultimate goal really is to find this entry. Okay. And we will explain um, referential integrity and form level security. We'll just touch these topics a little bit. So let's proceed. So this is Postgres database, and you can download this in this website. Okay, you have all the depending on what operation system you have. So Windows, Linux, Mac rather. Anyway, so let's create a database, and we'll name it Purchases DB. Save. So we already have here, and we are in the Purchases DB. So then you right click and I will share this file. Query tool. You choose the query tool and then open the file. And in my case, I already have it here. So let's create the tables. So we won't be wasting time. So the first table is created. Table suppliers. This is a lookup table. We will populate these tables later. So just to check, we will use the select statement. So as you can see there, let's not dwell too much on that. Again, we created the purchase orders table and then the products table, yes. And then, never mind this drop table. And then the purchases table, okay. And then, never mind that yet. The chart of accounts, correct. We have two here. The same. Then the accounts payable. I think this is the last one. Good. So now we will populate first the chart of accounts. Good. And then the lookup tables, suppliers. Good. Five. And then the products. Good. So we won't be populating yet this transaction table. Let's try to analyze first what's going on here. So in this case, we already have the chart of accounts, so we're ready to go, and the accounts, the rest are still empty except for the lookup tables. So the lookup tables, table suppliers. So let's just see it. Select from table suppliers and select from table products. Just make this quick just to see if for demonstration, of course, it's already there. So we're ready to go. So now the purchases and the purchase orders, these are the transactions table as we said earlier. And if we look back to our slide right here. This the other one. Okay, so if we look at our slide, we have here the purchasing department and the receiving department, right? So the purchase order was done here. As you can see, the filing of the POs, and then finally, when it was received, the goods. That's when the quantity was known. Was checked by the receiving department and placed in the warehouse. Okay, so that's how to interpret these insert statements. Okay, so make this uniform. So let's just start with one. Our purchase order should start with one, and then these are all the primary keys. So they must be unique. Just to demonstrate this first. So let's enter. As you can see, there is a successful, and let's just check. By the way, Postgres is not case sensitive, so it's okay. As you can see, we already populated the table, purchase orders, and then for the purchases, let's enter this one as well. By the way, to demonstrate the referential integrity we talked about earlier, purchases, let's see. Yes. So the purchase order ID, okay? This is very important. We can only use one, right? So that's the foreign key and primary key relationship between the two. As you can see, when we created the table, we have here the where was that? I think this yeah, purchase orders ID. That's the suppliers. So the purchases right here. Okay, so the purchase order ID and the product ID. We could not enter any values other than those contained in this table, right? In this table products and table purchase orders. So in this case, let's go back. So we entered here one for a primary key in the table purchase orders, and therefore we can only use one, right? So the purchase order ID right here, this must be one. Now, just for the sake of demonstrating, supposing we will use six. As you can see, there's an error because of referential integrity. Excuse me. All right, so let's just move fast. So the value again the same. It's 501 right here, so that's okay. And then quantity and unit price. That's okay. So it's successful. And then we acknowledge in the accounts payable. Again, we should watch out for referential integrity. So this is the primary key. The foreign key 201 exists in the table transactions, chart of accounts rather. And then the purchase detail ID. So this can't be 7. The purchase detail ID can only be 1 because that's the system. Right. So once we enter this one, we can now query using this. Right. As you can see, we already have the entry 4,000. So now let's start. Um, in the purchase order, supposing we'll create a new transaction. Let's say so two, right? So, but in reality, this is our computer generated, or sometimes when it's a semi-manual, you apply with your tax agency, and you know they will approve your form, so you will input the purchase order number here. But in this case, we'll just manually input this one. So date and the amount, or just enter any amount, 6,000, and of course the supplier here. So as you can see, our drop down shows the only available value. So let's choose 1001, and then we confirm the order. Now let's try to see if it's in the database. So let's select purchase orders. All right. So so as you can see, it already reflected the transaction we entered, right? So let's proceed. So that's the purchase order, and supposing it was received already, and as you can see, we have one and two, right? So ours was two, and the product ID we could just choose randomly, and then the purchase ID. This is a primary key, so therefore we must be very careful. So two, and the quantity, just put this randomly. Um, 55 unit price, 6, and enter. Okay, so let's go back and check our table purchases. And there you go, the second transaction. So let's go back to our application, accounts payable. By the way, I have hard coded the date and the account ID because this form only pertains to accounts payable. So, anyways, so here's our foreign key, which is 2, and it's automatic 6,000. And then 2 for our primary key. And we have entered, and let's check if it's in our accounts payable. Or was it? There you go. So we have completed the accounts. And let's check with our common table expression if it's in place. And there you go. We have the balance. So um, this comprises two transactions. And for purposes of financial statements, balances, or general ledger, this will already suffice. So that's it. That's our. We will discuss this more in a later video since this is already very long. So don't forget to subscribe and support this channel.